Southampton Insurrection was a conflict led by Nat Turner fought to free slaves. Although no laws were passed, this was an important time in history for the compromise of freeing slaves. On August 22, 1831, Joseph Travis, his wife, and their 2 children were killed and thrown into a fire pit by Nat Turner and his supporters for being the owners of Turner. In less than 24 hours, Turner had gathered 40 to 50 more supporters. They began the most successful revolt against the white. For the following 2 days, they had went from farm to farm, home to home, slaughtering white men, white women, and white children. Approximately 60 people had lost their lives to Turner and his group of assassins.
Nat Turner was born on October 2, 1800. Ever since he was a young child, he was a slave. His first owner, Benjamin Turner, died when Nat was 10 years old. He and his mother then became property of Samuel Turner, Benjamin's son. Nat Turner's father is believed to have escaped slavery and abandoned Nat when he was young. As far as being a slave, Turner was pretty lucky, as he was educated, became a minister, and was able to get married. In 1822, Nat married to Cherry, a fellow slave on the plantation. The couple had many children, yet the amount is unknown. Sam Turner eventually died, and Nat got auctioned off to the Moore family. However, Cherry got sold into a different family. Even though they were owned by different people, their holders allowed them to be able to visit each other because of their children. After this, Turner became more religious day by day. Sticking to his Christian beliefs, he started thinking he was chosen by God. He was convinced that he was chosen to fight against the white people. Throughout the 1820s, Turner was a Baptist preacher. He started seeing visions of God naming him the chosen one to fight against oppressors. These visions began his plans for the insurrection. He also received the reputation of a preacher for the African American community. In 1825, Nat deciphered,
"White spirits and black spirits engaged in battle, and the sun was darkened. The thunder rolled in the heavens, and blood flowed in the streams. And I heard a voice saying, 'Such is your luck, such you are called to see. And let it come rough or smooth, you must surely bear it.'"
This illustrates the fight between slaves and their oppressors, and Nat's visions from God saying Nat must maintain stable. Around the year 1828, Nat truly believed he was chosen as the instrument of revenge against not only slave owners, but all white people. In February of 1831, nearly 6 months before the massacre, strategies were put into place. The sign that told Turner he needed to start proposing ideas was actually an abnormality in weather. The sun had shed a grayish-blue light on the earth, which in his mind was a sign from God. On July 4, 1831, the insurrection was to take place. However, Nat fell ill and it was postponed until further notice. The later date was not set, however they were made prepared in case Nat got another vision from God. Then, on August 13, 1831, the sky took the same grayish-blue appearance it took the past February. Nat saw it as a sign from God, telling him the revolt should happen then. Now, historians speculate that it actually was the effect of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, a volcano nearly 3,000 miles away, that caused the deferred appearance. Nat rallied up his group of followers and prepared for the attack. On August 22nd, the rebellion materialized. Late that Sunday night, Turner and his followers began to attack white people, slave owners or not. They used knives, hatchets, and axes as opposed to muskets and firearms, because those were too hard to obtain and drew too much attention. Relentlessly killing any white person in sight, they spared only few. A group of followers spared a couple houses because they were owned by poor people, whom, in their eyes, didn't think of themselves any better than African Americans.
The rebels followed kind of a zigzag path. They stopped at most of the houses along the way, killing the slaveholders and their families who they found there.
Their attack lasted for almost 2 days and killed around 60 white men, women, and children. Finally, the state militia, reinforced with 3 companies of artillery, put an end to Turner's revolt. They killed many African Americans on sight, even the ones who didn't take part in the rebellion, and captured others to later execute them. However, the leader of the insurrection, Nat Turner, escaped. Rumors of the rebellion moving to Alabama and other states quickly spread. White citizens were in a state of apprehension, worrying about whether or not they would be the next victims of this brutal attack. The Richmond Constitution Whig newspaper published an article on August 25, 1831, stating,
Here for the first time, we learnt the extent of the insurrection and the mischief perpetrated. Rumor had infinitely exaggerated the first, swelling the numbers of the Negroes to 1,000 or 1,200 men, and representing its ramifications as embracing several of the adjacent counties.
Which shows that originally, the citizens of the South believed in widespread rumors, causing a state of havoc. They believed that the rebellion contained a lot more slaves than it actually did. Meanwhile, Nat Turner was on the run from state militia. He escaped while his fellow insurrectionaries got captured and killed. He ran into the woods and hid in a tiny cave. He managed to live in that cave for 2 months before Benjamin Phipps, a farmer, spotted him and reported him to the state police. On November 7, 1831, the Washington Daily Intelligencer published this article saying,
It appears that on Sunday morning, Mr. Phipps, having a gun, was going over to the land of Mr. Francis, came to a place where a number of pines had been cut down, and perceiving a slight motion among them, and when within a few yards, discovered the villain who had so long eluding pursuit. Mr. Phipps raised his gun to fire, but Nat hailed him and offered to surrender. Mr. Phipps, as the sole captor of Nat, is alone entitled to several rewards.
Nat Turner did have a fair trial. He was accused of conspiring to rebel and making insurrection. The evidence against him and his confession caused him to lose his case, giving him the death sentence. Before his execution, Turner gave a speech called the Jailhouse Confession. In it, he said,
As I was praying one day at my plow, the Spirit spoke to me, saying, Seek ye the kingdom of heaven, and all things shall be added unto you. And I was greatly astonished, and for 2 years prayed continually, whenever my duty would permit. And then again I had the same revelation, which fully confirmed me in the impression that I was ordained for some great purpose in the hands of the Almighty.
This proves that Turner planned and carried out the insurrection because he believed God told him to do so. On October 30th, 1831, Nat was hanged and died at the age of 31. Many people arrived to witness his execution, for he was seen as a monster amongst citizens. It is said that his deceased body was skinned, and people took a piece as a souvenir.
When people went to these kinds of affairs, they wanted to take a souvenir away that proved to everybody that they were there and that that person, that monster, is now no longer alive. And how do I know that? Because I've got a piece of his body right here.
Even though there were positive long-term effects, there were some consequences. Not only did most of the slaves who participated in the riot get executed, but also some innocent slaves lost their lives as well. Not to mention, some laws were set after this to prevent any more rebellions. It was then illegal to educate slaves. 30 years later, during the Civil War, William Wells Brown, an abolitionist, expressed,
30 years free discussion has materially changed public opinion in the non-slaveholding states, and a Negro insurrection would not receive the condemnation that it did in 1831. If the oppressor is struck down in the contest, his fall will be a just one, and all the world will applaud the act. This is a new era, and we are all in the midst of the most important crisis that our country has yet witnessed. Every eye is now turned toward the South, looking for another Nat Turner.
This interprets that the Civil War needed a leader much like Nat Turner, for he was able to go to violent lengths. During the time of the insurrection, these violent lengths were controversial, but during a war, they could be useful. Nat Turner was an important pawn in the history of slavery. His actions inspired others, and, although it occurred many years later, led to a new way of life that is followed today. Although Nat Turner's insurrection was extremely gruesome, it led to a better future for the people of America.
Conflict and compromise are two words that describe Nat Turner's Southampton insurrection very well. Obviously, it was a physical conflict, the large massacre, but it was also an emotional conflict, the slaves feeling the need to prove themselves to their oppressors. Compromise comes with later effects. The insurrection alone wouldn't be enough to abolish slavery. However, it showed people that they could fight for what they believed in, giving people the idea of the Civil War. Southampton insurrection was truly a turning point in history for the slave abolishment.